Hi everyone, we're going to look at how to use Excel for Wargames. Excel is pretty cool. You can do lots of fun stuff. You can enter in numbers, and then if you want to do something with those numbers, you can press the equals button, and this will start a formula. And you can then say, if you want to click on one of these numbers, it'll enter that into your formula. So I can say, if I want to make this number minus that number, I'd first press equals, and I click there, then I press the minus button, and I click on what I want to subtract from, and then I press enter. And it'll take 2 minus 3, give me minus 1. And that's like the basics of formulas. You can do all sorts of fun stuff. You could put that in brackets just like a regular formula, and then we can use this asterisk is the same as a times symbol, so we could do this minus this times something else, say that, and we can press enter again, and it'll give us 2 minus 3 minus 1 times 4 is now minus 4. You know, you can restructure this however you want. You can delete that and make it, you know, your operator like this, put the brackets in there. Now it'll be 2 minus 3 times 4. And if you want to, you can even highlight this, and it'll tell you what that actually equals. So you can see in there, this part's going to equal 12. If I highlight this, it's going to say this part equals 2. So if you're ever not sure what something is, you can double check. If I press that, it's going to go to minus 10. So you can change how your operators work however you like, just kind of with regular maths. So let's do some wargame stuff. Let's say we want to calculate the points of something. Say we've got a points value, we've got a movement, we've got a attack value, we've got a defense value, for example, and say we've got a bunch of units. Say we've got infantry, tank, cavalry, and armored train, for example. And you can change the width of these columns as you like. If you double click, it will automatically fit, or you can change them however you like. You can also use the various formatting to, you know, right align, left align. You can make them all bold. Whatever you want to do, you can highlight this line and make them all bold as your headings. And you can select those all and make them centered, for example. So say we want to calculate, we want different movement and attack values, defense values for all these units, and then we want to calculate points values for each one automatically. So let's say movement of infantry is 3, tank can be, I don't know, 6, cavalry can be 7, armored train can be 5, for example. Attack infantry, let's say, is like, I don't know, 2, tank, say 5, cavalry, say 3, armored train, let's say like 10 or something. Defense value, well, I'm just putting in some random numbers here, say 2, say 6, so make that 3, armored train, say 10. So we have all these values. You could press equals and then just click one by one, that plus this plus that. It'll give you, you know, the total of all those values. But there's an easy way to do it. You can hold down Alt and then press equals, and it'll bring up this sum formula. And then you just click wherever you want and drag, and it'll sum up all those cells. So it'll give us the same thing. And if I click on the cell, it'll show me the formula here of what it is. If I double click on it, it'll show me it on the screen which cells are being summed up, or which cells are part of the formula. And if I hover over the edge of these cells, you'll see my cursor changes from the big plus to this kind of movement icon. I can actually move around which row, or, you know, the area I want to sum up. I could just sum up this, for example. It'll just give me 2. If I double click again, I could sum up the row below and make it a tank, for example. But it's not really useful here, but just an example of how much you can change these. So now that I've got this summing up all these values here, the points value for that is now 7. I'll just make those bold. Now, what if I want to do the rest for all these here? You've got a couple options. You can copy and paste it there, and it'll automatically sum the next line. What you can also do is this little if we zoom right in, I suppose it doesn't matter if you zoom in, but there's a little thing at the bottom right. You can see the icon changes to this little plus sign. You've got a big plus sign, you've got a movement, and then you've got a small plus sign. And this is like the magic autofill. If you click on that and drag, it'll automatically fill with the same formula. So if I click on any of these, you can see this is looking at D4 to F4. Next one's looking at D5, F5, and it's summing up as you go. Like the row changes each time. And I can extend that down as far as I like. And so now we've got, you know, these dynamic point values. You can see we have armor train is the most expensive. It's got good movement and attack and defense. And we can change this if we want to. You know, if we want to make tanks more powerful, make it 10. Instantly, it'll change the points value there. And so that's pretty much the most basic way you can do it. If you want to say, if you want movement to be very, very important and not just adding it up, you can do different kind of formulas with this. You can change exactly how it works. So say we just want to have a sum of attack and defense, and you can drag this selection here by just highlighting the corners. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to get in there. Sometimes you might need to move it over and then change the size. So now it's just going to sum up those two. And then let's say we want to then multiply by the movement. Or maybe we want movement multiplied by 2 or something. So we could go, you know, we make our sum, we can change it where we like, then we put in the multiplication symbol, and then we select the cell we want to multiply by. And that's going to now multiply these two times that. And I can then autofill this by double clicking on the little corner there. And you can see now movement's very, very important in my point system now. And you can do this in multiple different ways. You could also do, instead of multiplying, you could say, let's say movement is now times 2. We'll make it twice as valuable. That'll give it a bit more weight, but not put it like, not make it everything like multiplied by your movement, by your movement score. So what are our other options? Let's say you want to have something that you can actually, let's say you're something like, you've got a skill, like a 3+, 5+, 3+. Maybe this is like the unit skill of how, and I'm just going to erase this and I'm just going to delete that points value and then enter a new sum of just these ones, make it reset that. Let's say we've got a skill score here, and that is very, very important and determines like how, if a unit will activate or not. And say this is like a D6, so this is like 3 or higher, this unit will activate, whereas a tank is less likely to. Cavalry might be somewhere in the middle, and armored train is, you know, less likely to activate. And say this is very, very important in the game, and you want it to be, you probably want to like multiply your entire points value by this. Now you could do this by, I mean, you could remove the plus from this, because if I try to go like this times, say, times the skill, it's not really going to understand what we're trying to do, because it thinks of this as like a text value. If I delete the plus, it'll then understand, okay, you're trying to do these numbers summed up times that. But if we have a plus in there, it kind of makes it a problem. So what we need to do is instead, we'll make a new column over here. And let's say 3+ is multiplied by 1, so you just have the same points value. Let's say 5+ is like 0.75, 4+ can be 0.8, and 5+ 0.75. So what we'll do is instead of using this column, we'll use this column over here. And that way we're now multiplying, you know, these basic movement, attack, defense values by our skill. So a 3+ is kind of like a normal unit. A 5+ is getting a bit more crappy, so it's going to be like 25% less value. 4+ kind of in the middle. It's got a 20% discount off its points values. And so it's kind of a way to do it. You can have this off the side, and then you could probably like, you could copy paste this into your rules document. And you could say, okay, here's my points system. It is currently showing us some decimals in there, which we can get rid of. But for example, if you wanted to just copy this in and you only had like 3, 5, 4, etc., you'd have to go and add the pluses manually. So this is a way to kind of do this with a hidden column off the side. So in order to get these these values like whole numbers, we're going to use a function called round. If we go equals round, and you can see we've got a few options there. We've got round, which rounds to the nearest number, round down or round up. So we're going to go round. It's going to ask us for what is the number you want to round. In this case, it's going to be this. And then it wants a comma there. And then the number of digits is how many decimal places you want. So I don't want any decimal places. So I'm just going to put 0. And then I close the brackets. And that's going to give me 7. And then as I copy, use the magic fill in the corner there to copy it down, it will now see it's rounded that. 16.5 becomes 17. If I click on that, you can see it's looking at that. 10.4 becomes 10. 18.75 becomes 19. So that's cool. It's useful, but we kind of want this to be up here. We don't want to have to do it down here, then copy paste it in or something. It'll kind of ruin the whole plan. So what this is doing is it's looking at this cell, and inside this cell, the C4, is this. So if I was to copy all of this and replace the C4 with that, for example, instead of looking at C4, it's looking at the original formula. You only need one equals at the start of your formula, so you want to delete this equals in here, and then suddenly you'll see it come to life, and now look, it's looking at all this and this combined, which is originally what that was looking at. But now we also have this rounding function in there. So that's part of our round function, that's part of our round function, and then this in the middle is like the original function that was in C4. If we press that, it's going to give us the same thing, but really we want this formula to be up here. So the way I usually do that, you could take this and copy it in, copy paste it in, copy paste, and then there you go, you have it. But another way to do it is simply to type in, we know we want to round this function, so I'm just going to type in round after the equals. Type in round, I'm going to do an open bracket. This is what we want to round, so we just leave that part. Then we're going to do our comma, and then we're going to do the number of digits, which it's asking for, which is 0, and then I need a closing bracket there. And so that's usually the way I do it, is to add one function to another function. And if I autofill this, you can autofill up, you can then autofill down from the same place. Now you can see our points values are nicely rounding. We have, it's rounding the sum of this plus this times that, which is 18.75. You can highlight it to see what the, if you highlight part of a sum, it'll tell you what is actually there. You can see 0.75 appears there, which is that part. And sum of this, you can see is 25, which is 10, 10, and I think there's a 5 under there. So you can see that's currently working as we like it. So we can now take this and paste it into our rules. You can format it up a bit, however you want to do it. You can make it look pretty. But what if we want to tweak our skill here? What if suddenly we decide inventory should be, activating less or have a lower skill? We want to make this 4+. If we do that, our modifier here doesn't change. So what we really want is something that links this modifier to a table that we create, like what I would call like a lookup table. So in order to do this, I'm going to create a new Excel file. Just going to make like a smaller side Excel file here. And I can probably do that. And I'll just make it separately to start with. I'll eventually combine them, but making separate is quite useful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a lookup table just by saying skill, and then I'm going to call it modifier, and we'll say like skill 2+, 3+, and let's see if this will actually like autofill for me. Oh no, it's just going to do 2+, 3+ over and over again. That's not very helpful. 2+, 3+, 4+, 5+, 6+. So say these are our skills that we want to look up. And then we can set our own modifier here. Let's say 3+ is your average. 2+ is going to be, let's say, times 1.2, so it'd be 20% more expensive. 4+ is going to be 0.8 multiplied by 0.8, so 20% cheaper. 5+, let's say 0.75. and let's say 6 plus is a really crap skill, you're going to be 0.6 or something like that. We can get rid of this, and you can see now it's multiplying by 0, so it's not going to give us what we're looking for. What I do want is just to put in, I want to put my skill here so I remember that's where we're looking at. So in here, I want something in here that looks at this and returns the modifier we've set. And that way later on we can tweak these values and it will update all our points values. And the way to do that is a VLOOKUP. So in order to do that, and now just as an aside, if your points values aren't calculating like instantly, sometimes your Excel isn't set up correctly. You want to go to options here, and then you want to go formulas, and you can see workbook calculation needs to be set to automatic. If it's set to manual, sometimes you'll get weird. If I change this, it'll see it's got a line through it. It says your workbook has stale values. So if you don't set it to automatic calculation, these won't update. So you then need to go to options, formulas, automatic calculation, and that will allow you to, anything you change will automatically be updated. For example, if I put in 3 here, it'll automatically update. So cool. All right, so now let's do our VLOOKUP. We want to reference this and return the modifier. So we're going to go to formulas here, insert function, and then you can type in VLOOKUP, click go, and it'll bring up which one you're looking for. I use it regularly, so usually it's at the top of my list of what I need. Double click on that, and this is our function arguments for a VLOOKUP. And we're going to enter them one by one. The lookup value is what we're going to look for. It has to be the same on both tables. So we're going to look for this 4 plus here. Then we're going to click on the next box, and this is our table array. So this is the table we're going to look up, or where we're looking. In this case, it's going to be this here. I don't need to include the skill and modifier part because you're never going to look for a skill level called skill. It's only ever going to be these parts. And you can see here, it's added all this information as to what we're looking up. It says A3, B7 with lots of like dollar signs around it. And you can see A3 to B7 is actually the range in the sheet we're looking at. And it's called Book 1, Sheet 1. And actually the name of this is Book 1, and the sheet is called Sheet 1. So this is the exact like file location of this according to Excel. So that's set up correctly. Next one is the column index. So each column is considered a number. This will be 1, 2, 3, 4. So in this case, our table starts in A, so that's considered to be 1. So we want to look at column 2 like this. And if you need to, you can get a little like image that shows you A, B, C. If you need to know what P is, if you're looking up column P or something, you know it's 16. You can get a little quick reference if you need to. But in this case, we're just doing the next row over, which will be 2. And range lookup, you just put 0. If it's false like this, it'll only look up the exact value. If you put true, it'll kind of look up values that are close or something. I don't really use that. We want accuracy, damn it. So we'll just click OK here. And now you can see, if I double click on this, you can see it's looking at that. And it's referencing this table. 4 plus is 0.8, which is correct. If I change this to 0.9, you can see now it's also updated to 0.9. Change it back 0.8 and 0.8. So that's good. Now all I need to do is then autofill this down, and suddenly it's now referencing all my skill values there. If I change this to 3 plus, suddenly my skill is updated and my points value are updated. If I decide that 3 plus is actually pretty powerful and I want to make it 1.2, you can see suddenly cavalry got more expensive. And let's say let's say 4 plus should be a little bit cheaper. I'll make it 0.7. You can see infantry became 5 points, and this is now 0.7. So that's VLOOKUPs, very, very useful. And what we're going to do is we're now going to convert all these to a VLOOKUP, because generally your attack value might not be worth that much in the points value. So say you want your movement, for example, you want it to be something you can actually use, like 100 meters, 300 meters, 400 meters, and I don't know, 600 meters or something like that. Currently it's looking at this and it can't really work out what these are. As soon as you put something non-number, it's thinking it's a text value. And yep. You might, yeah. So you might also get an issue if you're entering formulas and this is set to text. You might get a weird, it'll start doing this. So make sure in the Home tab that this number is set to general. And then you can just click into your formula and press enter again, and it'll come right. So that's a little fault finding. If you find that it's just putting the formula there and not giving you what you need, make sure that your number here is set to general. So for example, movement, we want to have, I'm going to copy these over here. So we have a separate kind of little area for our lookup values. And what I want to do is, instead of looking up this area, let's look up this area over here, our actual values that we're going to use. So I'm going to autofill that. Now we can put in here whatever we want, or we can relate these values to the actual points values we want to use. And we're going to make a lookup table for this as well. And I'll just zoom in here so you can see. Movement modifier, we're going to have an attack modifier, and a defense modifier as well. So modifier there. Okay, movement. We got 100, 300 meters, 400 meters. And in fact, you could kind of autofill this if you like. If I go like this, and I'll just make this centered for my own sanity. If I choose this and then autofill, it should. Okay, it's not really. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Maybe it needs up to 400 meters, then I can autofill. Can I? Nope, it's just going to repeat it. Sometimes it repeats the pattern, and sometimes it allows you to increase. So in this case, if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, I can then autofill. It'll do like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, for example. I need a bit more space here. To make a new row, I can highlight this and press Control Shift. Oh, here's my Control Shift plus. Just making sure my keyboard is showing up there. Control Shift plus, and that'll add a row there. And then I can do I need to get up to 10, don't I? So I'll put a couple of rows there. And you have to highlight the whole region in order to get those, get it counting up for you. So let's say attack 1. I'll just put in some random modifiers here. Just change my alignment to centered. Let's say that's 1.2, 1.3, 1.5, 1.5, 1.6. Say it gets to be very attacks get to be very powerful up in these areas, and say that's like crazy. Defense will do the same kind of thing. So this is the points we're going to actually add in, and this is like what you use in game. So let's do the same. Whoops. The same here. Make that down to 10. And we'll say that like this is worth nothing, that's worth 0.5, this is worth 0.75. Maybe these start to get more expensive here. They're about the same in our system, let's say, for example. And then here it starts to get a bit better, but 9 and 10 are pretty much equal. So, for example, in our theoretical system. Movement modifier, let's say this is worth nothing. Anyone can move 100 meters, but that gives you 1 point more expensive. Maybe that's 2, 3. Maybe that's 3.5, maybe that's 4. I'm just guessing some modifiers, some points values here. You can tweak it as you understand in your system that the difference between moving 100 meters and 500 meters should make it more expensive, and you can tweak the values to just see how things work. And then now I'm going to do my VLOOKUPs. So movement here, let's do a VLOOKUP. I do formulas, insert function, VLOOKUP, click OK. My lookup value is going to be this movement here. Table array is going to be my movement lookup table here. And once again, I'm looking at column 2, 1, 2, and range is always 0. And here we go. 100 meters is a modifier of 0, and I can autofill that down by clicking. And now I've got the correct, 300 meters gives me a modifier of 2. I'll do the same for my next one. Yep. So let's do another VLOOKUP. Okay. Lookup value is now going to be attack. Table array is going to be these attack modifiers here, and you can just drag down. It'll follow you. You can scroll up and down while you're selecting stuff. So column is once again 2, range lookup 0. Now this is giving us our attack values, and you can see attack value 3 is a 1.2, which is correct there. Yep. And you can see our points values are starting to come together now. Defense, we'll do the same thing. VLOOKUP, look up the defense value. Table array is going to be this defense value here. Column 2, range 0, and then I'll autofill that down. And now you can see everything's pretty much set up. So we have, it's summing up all our points values for movement, attack, defense, and then multiplying by skill. And then if later on we want to say, okay, defense 6 is pretty overpowered, let's make that 5 as well. Suddenly our tank has become more powerful. And let's make this 12. And you can now see that defense values are much more important. A tank is now 10 points. So this is quite useful in being able to see how your system works and add the points, create the points values based on the experience of playtesting. Now the final thing we do here is we're going to just combine these sheets together. So I'll select this sheet, just click somewhere, and then click on this sheet tab at the bottom, click and drag, and then I can just drag it into the sheet like this. And now they're in the same sheet. You'll see if I double click on this, it never really shows you where this is, unless it's on the same sheet. The reason I do this like this is that if you try to do a VLOOKUP within the same sheet, for example, let's say I remove the skill part, and I want to do, if I try to do a VLOOKUP, insert function, VLOOKUP, looking up skill level here, table array, I can then click on this sheet here. I can select my skill area, but you can see now it's missing these little $signs. If I put in the column 2 and range 0, it means you can't really see it when you're typing in your values. But if I click OK on this, the first one's OK. Skill 4 is 0.7, that's correct. Yep, right now it's looking at this range, but as I copy it down, each time, see now I've got an error. Each time I go down, see I've got A3, B7, if I go down, it's now A4, B8. So this area it's looking at is now this. And each time I copy it down, it's going to look at a lower and lower number until eventually some of those rows aren't visible anymore to what it's looking for. So what those little $signs do is they make it a fixed area that will never change. And if I enter those in manually either side of each of those letters, you just put the $signs and then you can autofill it. You can now see as I go down, only this lookup value changes and my actual table I'm looking at does not change. So that's the way to, that's why it's easier to make it in a separate sheet than combine them. You don't have to manually put in these little $signs. I think there's a shortcut to do it as well. I think if you highlight and go like Control Shift F4 or something like that. No, that's not it. It's something like that. I don't remember exactly what the shortcut is. There's a shortcut to add those $signs, which I don't use very often. And so that is kind of the basics of creating a points value and lookup system. I hope that's been useful. I'm trying to think, is there anything else we want to look at here? So at this point I can tweak things. Now if you want to move this away somewhere, you right click and go move or copy. And then I want to go to a new book, so I want to get it separately. I'll go new book, and then you can either create a copy or you can move it. If you don't create a copy, it'll just move the whole thing. So I click OK. It's now copied into a new sheet. And now I could sit here and kind of tweak values until I get points values that kind of look correct. Infantry right now are way too cheap. They're only 1 point. So I'm thinking that some movement should be at least 1 point. Let's make this 1.5. They have attack 2, so attack 2 only gives you 1 point. And skill, well, maybe we make their skill better because they should be like 3+. And now you can see their skill point, their points value is starting to get a little bit better. You could also give them a more decent defense score, and maybe your defense of your tank is much higher. So maybe it should be around 10, and this should be like, or this should be 8 or something. So you can kind of tweak things until things look about right. And then with this, it's nicely formatted in that it uses the values you use in your game. You can paste it into your word processor or whatever it is, and you already have your meters in there, or your movement distance, your skill. If you later go on to, format your rules, for example, you've got this all nicely set up and you've got everything centered, and then you kind of make some updates and you want to change it. I think the best way to do it is you go into your Excel file, you copy the values you want, and then you'll need to paste those into a new table. If you try to paste them in here, it'll do all sorts of weird stuff like that. So paste into a new table in your word processor, then copy from that, and then you can paste in, and you'll mostly have the values. You'll have the values needed, but then you might need a little bit more formatting, but it saves you, if your table was all nicely adjusted and you had it like, out here, and you had all sorts of cool stuff going on, and it was a bit different to your Excel file. You can then easily update your values. So yeah, I hope that has been useful. That is explaining how to create a point system, and yeah, next one will be about how to do a playtester.